Is Peter Desmond Kelly, host of Peter the Healer, your celestial broadcaster, the place for great interviews, the place where I ask the questions nobody else does. And my guests today are very, very special. What they've done is they've both experienced these traumas that have allowed them to discern certain special qualities that will help anyone lead a successful life. In their case, we're talking about a beautiful former Vogue model who was basically at the top of her career, and she decided she wanted to stop trying to attain the beautiful look of a woman and pursue studies at a university. But while she was at the university, she had a colleague or another student have a certain possessive attraction towards her. And it became more and more disturbing for her until she got a restraining order against him. And the way he handled that, in fact, was unfortunately the way a lot of men do. There's been a lot of research done on this, and it's especially when couples are in the midst of a separation or breakup. The woman is trying to do the best she can to separate herself from danger, and it ends up turning into something ugly and tragic. In her case, what happened is that he kidnapped her, took her to an isolated place outside of town, and stabbed her, leaving her to die. And then we have Dr. Alan Lycka, who was and still is, I should say, a cosmetic dermatologist, very well known in Canada and around the world. And he's at the top of his career, and he's given a diagnosis of Lou Gehrig's disease, or ALS, and he was given 6 months to live. Both of these people actually then met later on, and after turning around their own tragic stories into success, they've co-written a book. We're going to talk about that and their amazing stories when we return in a few moments.
Hello?
Hi.
Is this Peter the Healer?
Yes. No, actually, I'm the audio engineer for the show, Peter the Healer, your celestial broadcaster.
Where is Peter the Healer?
That's a good question. I really don't know. I've been trying for the last 10 minutes trying to reach him, but he's not answering.
Have you tried tuning into 528 Hertz, the love frequency?
No, that's a good idea. I'll give it a try. Let's see what happens. Hey, you know what? I think I'm getting some
Radio Noise.
Hello? Anybody out there?
DJ e produtor brasileiro Rod Novaes.
All right, we're back again with Peter Desmond Kelly, your host, Peter the Healer, your celestial broadcaster. And I have these fascinating guests with me today, Dr. Alan Lycka and Harriet Tinka. And welcome to the show.
Thank you for having us. It's really a pleasure to be here, Peter.
You bet. Thank you, Peter. Nice to meet you.
Well, that wouldn't be entirely true. In fact, last Wednesday, we met already in our attempt to do the first interview. However, me, and I will be fully honest, I made a huge error. Guess what it was? I didn't press the record button. After we did a fantastic interview, I see, there's nothing recorded. But so today, as Harriet will testify, she was here a bit earlier and she saw that I went through all the steps to make sure that it was recorded. Okay, so these two people are graceful enough to actually allow me to have a second chance. So thank goodness for you two. God bless you. And I was all prepared to give a whole biographies, but when I try to get to that page, oh, here we are. Okay, so here we go. I'm going to give a little bio. Dr. Alan Lycka was escorting his wife and young daughter around the happiest place on earth when his wife noticed his foot was flapping. It wasn't just planting properly. In the prime of his life, considered Canada's premier cosmetic dermatologist, with a thriving practice, a leading philanthropist, and committed family man, he was perplexed, going through a full range of tests and doctors. Initially, no one could diagnose it until one specialist delivered the devastating news that he had ALS, Amyotrophic Lateral Sclerosis, also known as Lou Gehrig's disease. And not only that, he was given only 6 months to live. Get your affairs in order, the doctor said. And then Harriet Tinka was a gorgeous model turned student at the University of Calgary. Featured on haute couture runways and in fashion magazines, she chose to turn her back on the soul-crushing pressure to be the ideal female body. Instead, she chose to go to university and focus on getting an education. During this period, one of her friends began to turn critical, mean, and possessive, until one night he attacked her. She was beaten, abducted, and stabbed, and left for dead. These two remarkable human beings have a story to tell. They wrote a book together, The Secrets to Living a Fantastic Life. Two survivors reveal the 13 golden pearls they've discovered. So I would like you all to welcome to my show Dr. Alan Lycka and Harriet Tinka.
Thank you, Peter. This is indeed a pleasure to be here.
Well, it's certainly for me, because you're giving me a second chance, and I commit to this day that I am giving you the credit for making me more tenacious. Chapter number 10 in your book. So let's start with Harriet. I'm a bit old-fashioned. Harriet, tell me a little bit about, more for the people out there watching, a little bit about what it was like for you to be attacked.
Oh, you bet. And your introduction really basically summarized the whole story, but I'll just touch on just a few things. Being attacked was definitely not, it wasn't exciting. It was really depressing and very scary. Now, I had.
Did you feel you were going to die?
I was frightened. I was basically frozen. It's basically like when they call the fight or flight. So I experienced that when I was going through, because the most frightening thing was being in the vehicle with him. However, my fear was all throughout the relationship. He was always threatening me, yelling, screaming, hitting me, but then he would apologize. So I took that as it was okay for me to forgive him. So I went on. But my biggest moment when I was frightened was when he asked me to get out of the car, call my parents, and say goodbye to them, because that would be the last time that I would ever hear from them. And when I said no, he asked one more time, get out of the car, go call your parents and say goodbye to them. And I said no again. So that second no was what really triggered his anger even more. So he reached over, grabbed a knife, and stabbed me 2 times. And there was blood gushing everywhere. Now, I have absolutely no idea how I got from that point to when I got to the hospital. So when I woke up, I looked around, and there was the doctor and my father. And the doctor told my father that chances are I would never walk again because the stab wound was so deep and I'd lost so much blood. And he said the healing process would have to start eventually. But when he told me that, I was so depressed. I was an international model, walking the runways, full of confidence. Now here I was a cripple and depressed. So the only thing that separated the confidence and depression was my trauma. I started asking, why me, why me, why me? And eventually I had to stop and just try to heal. So it was during the physiotherapy when I was waiting to get my physio, a little girl came in and she was my guardian angel and she was my turning point. So that's how I ended up changing my life and meeting Dr. Lycka at an award event. And that's how we wrote the book, The Secrets to Living a Fantastic Life.
Wow, that's amazing. Well, let's turn over to Dr. Alan Lycka. Tell us your story and your impression when you first heard the news that you only had 6 months to live.
You know, that was one of the most devastating times in my life. But I think I'm going to bring up to how I got there, because I think that's very important. It was February of 2003. It was during spring break, and I and my wife and my youngest daughter had taken a chance to go to Disneyland, the happiest place on earth. And we were walking. It was a long, hot, sticky day. And my wife turned to me and she said, "What's wrong with you, hon?" You know, for once in my life, I hadn't said anything wrong. I hadn't done anything wrong. I hadn't even said it. I hadn't even thunk anything wrong, Peter. So, you know, I was out in the blue and I said, "Dear, what do you mean?" She said, "Listen to your foot." Oh, that's a funny thing to say. But, you know, my foot had suddenly and mysteriously developed a foot drop. Every step I was taking, it was hitting the pavement. It was slapping on the pavement. You know, and that's just out of the blue. And your foot isn't designed to do that. It's designed, your brain sends a signal to your foot to lift it up with every step that you take. So something definitely was going wrong. And I said to my wife, "I haven't got the faintest idea." And she said, "Well, when we get back, you better get this checked out." Well, when your wife says that in that tone of voice, you know you better listen. And I was a good boy, and I did what I was told. I went to see a lot of doctors, hundreds of them, and they did brain scans, they did CAT scans, they did scans. And you know, at the end of the day, what they showed, Peter?
What?
They showed absolutely nothing. The doctors were totally befuddled. They didn't have a faintest idea what was going on. So, you know, I went and had more tests and more tests and more tests. I had $1 billion worth of tests. And at the end of the day, I ended up at the doorway of a world-leading neurologist. And, you know, neurologists are supposed to be these guys that put all these puzzles together. They're the experts on the brain. They're the experts on the nerves. So I walked in and he said, "Hi, Dr. Lycka, you better be sitting down when I tell you this." And I said, "What do you mean? I just have a dropped right foot." And he said, "No, you don't. You have ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease, and in 6 months you're going to be dead. Get your affairs in order." Wow, that was devastating, but I had it in
Great bedside manner.
Yeah, it even got worse. I asked him, is there a way to prove this? He said, "Of course, on autopsy." So I shot back, "I'm not going to die to prove you wrong." So he said, "Well, you know, you better get it in order." So I left. And, you know, when you go through something like this, you go through a grief reaction. You go through anger. oh God, I'm so angry. I can bite the head off nails. Okay. You go through bargaining. Oh God, please don't let this happen. I'll do anything not to let this happen. You go through a period of depression when you just cannot have anything happen in your life, and you won't even get out of bed, and you're just as miserable and as tired as anything. But you also go through a period of denial where there's nothing wrong. I can do anything. There's no diagnosis. But you know in your heart of hearts that's not right. Now, these are phases that Elizabeth Kubler-Ross said in her book on death and dying. And in that book, she calls these as phases. Well, I know they're not phases. They're little miniature things that go on. And you flit from one to the other in seconds. And your brain flits from one to the other. And, the last phase that Elizabeth Kubler-Ross has is acceptance, that you accept the diagnosis. Well, I knew in my heart of hearts this wasn't correct. So I asked my wife, what do I have? And she said, I don't know. But, I don't think it's ALS. I don't think it's this Lou Gehrig's disease. But she said, you're smart. You can figure it out. Those doctors weren't smart enough. So I thought about it, and I looked around. It was 2003, and they had just invented this thing called the internet. Have you ever heard of it, Peter?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Well, back then it was very primitive. It didn't have Dr. Google to go in and tell you what you had. It didn't have a lot of resources. In fact, you had to get on by dial-on connections. And with that, your phone would make a connection with the box, and it would go for about 15 minutes before you connected. Now, I had friends that were nerds, and they helped me with this because you couldn't even speak to the internet. You couldn't talk to it. You just had to use a language called DOS, which gave primitive commands, and it allowed you to look at things. And I looked up every disease that looked like ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease, that was not ALS. And I found a doctor in Colorado Springs, Colorado, by the name of David Martz, that had gone through exactly what I had done, except he got worse much more rapidly. And he was on his deathbed when a doctor from Texas came up to see him. A lot of doctors were coming up to say goodbye to David because he was a very well-known doctor. He was very well regarded. And this doctor came up and he looked at David and he said, there's something wrong with this picture. I don't think you have ALS. I don't think you have Lou Gehrig's disease. I think you have something else. David whispered because he was so weak at that time. What do I have? The doctor from Texas said, I think you have chronic Lyme's disease. I think you were bitten by a tick. And I think that's what's happening here. And if I'm right, he said, I will start you on treatment and you'll be better. Well, David said, well, what do I have to lose? I'm dying. The doctors started him on treatment and a miracle happened. Like Lazarus, he arose from the dead. He literally got up and was doing everything there. And he founded a treatment center to treat people with this weird disease that no one had ever heard of. So I knew I had to get in touch with David. And so I phoned every hospital in Colorado Springs. I met up with David at the Methodist Hospital. Any doctor can get in touch with any other doctor if he goes through the right channels, and it's very easy to do. So I got in touch with him, and we talked for hours. And David said, can you come down and see me? And I said, when? He said, right now. And I said, I can't. It's Thanksgiving here in Canada, and my wife has invited 50 people over. He said, well, aren't there any planes in Canada? He said. So I knew I had to go. So I went and I apologized to my wife. I said, I'm sorry, dear, I'm not going to be away. I'm not going to be here for Thanksgiving. But when I explained it to her, she said, of course you must go. If this is going to solve your problem, please, please go. And I will take care of everything, she said. So I knew I had to go. So I got on a plane from Edmonton to Denver. It was a great flight, Peter. But then I got on this little puddle jumper from Denver to Colorado Springs. It was the worst flight of my life. You see, the air comes off the desert at that time of the day, and it creates something called eddies. And those eddies cause the plane to drop. from about 100 feet or 200 feet or 300 feet. And it does it over and over and over again. It's like the drop of doom at Disneyland, over and over and over. So in 15 minutes, this goes through about 15 times those drops of doom. And you come off the plane totally green, totally sick. So I crawled off that plane, and there was David to meet me. Wow, was I a lucky man. He said, let's go talk. So we talked. And he said some amazing words to me. He said, I think history is repeating itself, he said. And I think I could start you on treatment, and I can make you better. So at that point, I said, I have nothing to lose. And he started me on treatment, and I was able to maintain my status as a world-leading cosmetic doctor for over 30 years until I retired last year. Now, the beauty of this is that when you go through something like this, Peter, your life changes. You realize you've been given a second chance. Now, you can become hard and mean and brittle, and you can become bitter, or you can become somebody that wants to give back and help others. And you know, that's what we're in right now. And along the way, I met Harriet on this journey, and we were able to think about writing this amazing book, and we're very happy we did. And maybe Harry can tell a little bit about how we met.
Yes, we, as Dr. Lycka said, he's a big philanthropist, and he sponsored one of the biggest events in Canada, in Edmonton, in our community. And the event was called the YWCA Women of Distinction. What the event was about, it was about recognizing women in the community who had made an impact, either through their career as a trailblazer. So there was astronauts, there was physicians, and there was different women who had made an impact. For me, I was under the category called Turning Points. And that turning point category was about women who had used their life to make a difference in the community. There was about 15 women in the category. I was the lucky recipient to win in that category. So I felt honored. I accepted the award. And then thereafter, I met Dr. Lycka. I asked him out for lunch, and I bought him lunch, just reminding him.
He always reminds me of that. You got to be careful, Peter, when a young, attractive lady buys you lunch.
Yeah.
Always your wife.
Yes,
Yes.
That's right. I'll hold it against him forever.
Yeah.
But it was a great meeting.
Sorry to interrupt, but I'm curious to know, what were you doing at that point? I mean, you entered into this contest, so you must have already developed quite a career.
You bet. I opened up my business called Empowered Me, and Empowered Me was about igniting young women to overcome any limitations and be the truest version of themselves. So I had made an impact in the community and empowered so many women, so many children, and the other women who had done something similar. But the stories that I had done and how many children I had impacted was outstanding. So for that reason, there was probably like 10 judges who chose me as the winner. So when I won, I was excited because I got to meet Dr. Lycka, the biggest sponsor for the event. And then we had lunch and we talked about my story and his story. And we said, hey, perhaps one day we should write a book. And that was almost 4 years ago. And here we are today, 4 years later.
Congratulations. I mean, both of you have such inspiring stories. And yeah, why don't you mentioned the book. Let's talk about the book now. I mean, you actually had a connection with somebody who, I mean, has probably the best name in self-publishing books, Jack Canfield, who, among others, was a co-author of Chicken Soup for the Soul. And that in itself, the story of that is quite incredible because he, excuse me, he went to hundreds of different publishers only to be turned down with this incredible book, which has now become a bestseller many times at the New York Times. And what he did was, again, tenacity. Which is chapter 10 in your book. He didn't give up. He knew this was a winner. He knew if he kept on fighting and going and going and going, he was going to be a success. So what he did, he self-published. one of the pioneers in self-publishing. And then it became famous, and publishers were running after him to publish his book. So tell me, Dr. Lycka, you had a connection with Alan Canfield, I understand.
With Jack Canfield, yes.
Yeah.
Jack was, Jack and I go way back. I met him years ago, and he actually invited us to his house to help work on our book together. So Harriet and I flew down to the San Bernardino, California, and we spent a weekend with Jack working on our book, helping to make it the way that it is. And he said a couple of things. He said, first of all, this book is all about stories. Each and every one of your pearls of wisdom must be stories. So we spent a long time putting the stories together for it. So each of our chapters are grounded in what I call a story, almost a parable to take a person to another level. And then Harriet and I decided that because we were discussing this book along the way, every chapter, we thought our dialogue was very important. Every time we'd meet, we'd discuss one of the pearls and we'd record the dialogue that was going on between us. And we thought this would be a great part to make this a voyage of discovery for anybody that was reading a book. So this book is not like every other self-help book. It really is not pedantic. It's not taking a point of view. It's helping people to discover these golden pearls of wisdom in themselves. And I'd like to first of all, go off a little bit and explain why we have pearls in here, because pearls are very unique things in nature. In fact, golden pearls exist. They exist in the South Pacific. They exist in the Indonesia area. They're amazing little things, and only certain oysters can make them. So these pearls are very, very rare. A single solitary pearl can sell upwards of $10,000. So these pearls are amazing little things that help people to understand what's going on. But what goes on in making a pearl is this. A pearl gets irritated by a grain of sand. It gets inside of its shell. So in other words, that grain of sand traumatizes the pearl, and the pearl doesn't like it. So it walls it off with this wondrous golden material called luster. And that luster makes the pearl this beauty. As a result, it comes out of the trauma that's there. So with Harriet and I, our experiences helped us find these golden pearls of wisdom. Now, what's unique about these golden pearls of wisdom is that they're in every one of us. You have to just discover them. You have to find them and bring them to the surface. You have to let these pearls be part of yourself. And that's what Harriet and I did. Now, we started with 20 golden pearls. Mm-hmm. But after giving our book to a lot of people to read and so on, people said, oh, please, just give us your best pearls. There's too many here. 20 is just overwhelming for us. So they said, please give it. So we whittled it down to 13 of our best golden pearls. And that's what we currently have. We have some amazing pearls that are there. And we can go through them if and when you like, Peter.
Well, I thought that perhaps I would read a excellent review of the book. This was just done recently on Amazon, which is where people can buy your book. And but before I do that, I'm just going to show people the book in the background. It's coming up, if I can find it. And there we are. It's right behind me. And in a moment, I am going to present Dr. Alan Lycka and Harriet Tinka's book, The Secrets of Living a Fantastic Life.
Drum roll.
There it is. Ta-da, drum roll, please. So here, I'm going to read the review, and which, by the way, as of last week, the 23rd, there were 5 stars from all the reviewers. Okay, here it is. In picking up a copy of The Secrets to Living a Fantastic Life, I found more than a book. I found a journey. Learning about Dr. Lycka and Harriet's stories was remarkable. to think about the trials that these people went through and didn't stop, didn't quit, kept pushing, even in the face of death, is inspiring. When you look at that and then take the stories, making these takeaways actionable in everyday life just adds substance to the concept. This is a wonderful book that truly becomes a manual for changing your everyday life. I highly recommend this book as a testament to survival and to the lessons learned. What a review. What do you think of that?
Wow, that's excellent. Wow, it just makes us feel speechless just to know that
You
our
know,
book.
Peter, this book really has been reaching a lot of critical acclaim. It's amazing how much critical acclaim that we've had. We've became a #1 bestseller in this great pandemic of 2020, which to me is almost unheard of. I mean, to have this beautiful thing happen to us is just beyond belief. And all I can say is we are so humbled and honored to have this. I am just thrilled that this is something that could happen to both Harriet and I, because it's truly an honor and a privilege to be able to serve and help so many people. And that's what Harriet and I have adopted, a life of serving people now, and so that we can help them get to a higher level so that they can help them through these trying times. And I don't want people to concentrate on my story or Harriet's story. I want them to concentrate on the fact that we overcame these things in our lives. And ours is a story of triumph over adversity. Ours is a story of becoming something better as a result of this. You know, the amazing thing about diamonds is they're made because of pressure and heat. And so these diamonds are made. Steel is made because of the fact that it's tempered. It's made by a heating environment and made into something much stronger than it would have been before. And this is what our trials did for us. They helped us to become better than we were. And we'd like to share that and give that back to everybody.
Amazing. And you know, this is a story then of survival, not just survival, but actual being successful and excelling with your own talents. In fact, this caused you to dig deep into your soul and become a better human being. And that's what I'm getting. And I wonder, Harriet, maybe you can relate this to the pandemic that everyone's going through. Seems to be unrelenting. It doesn't seem to be stopping. You know, the moment we think the curve is being flattened, it goes up somewhere else. And so we really are living in trying times. I mean, probably the worst the world has faced since World War II. I wonder if you can shed some light on how your book might be able to help people in these difficult times.
Oh, you bet. I'm happy to share that. Now, during the pandemic, that's when everybody goes through different emotions, and the Chinese actually don't have a word for crisis. They have the word for crisis for them is danger and opportunity. So there's two words when you look at the Chinese character. So they don't have, for them, when there's danger, there's opportunity. So that's how you can look at this time. And when you're in your own solitude, when you're in isolation, that's when you begin to question your life. You begin to say, what is my purpose? And in 1665, Isaac Newton discovered the law of gravity. And that was during the time when there was a pandemic in England. So you can see when there's a pandemic, there's opportunity to do things. And in our book, we have, that will be one of the golden pearls is intention or purpose. And Dolly Parton says it so brilliantly. She says, everybody has a purpose. And I absolutely agree with that. So in our book, we use a concept called ikigai. And what ikigai is a reason for being. It's a Japanese word for reason for being. So when you're trying to find your reason for being, you ask of yourself 4 very important questions. Number 1, what is it that you love to do? It can be, maybe you love going to the museum, you like the art gallery. This probably means that you like things. It doesn't mean you want to be an artist. Perhaps it means you want a career that has creativity. Or maybe you love to play soccer. You may not be necessarily a good soccer player, but you like that teamwork, that competitive nature. So maybe you want a career in that sort of thing. So that's number one. What is it that you love to do? Number two, what are you good at? Sometimes you don't know what you're good at, but your friends will be able to tell you based on what you've done for them. Maybe you're a good listener. You could be a counselor. Maybe you are good with numbers. You could be an accountant like me, you know, a bean counter. And then number three, the next question is, what does your community need with this pandemic? What is it? What is the gap that's missing in your community? So that's number three. And then number four is, what can you do and get paid for it? Because you need the resources to continue doing what you love to do. We need to get paid for what we do. And some people may not want to get paid. Maybe they want to volunteer. So those are the four questions to ask of yourself during this pandemic. What is it that you love to do? What are you good at? What does your community or the world need? And number four, what can you do and get paid for it? Now, these four questions, once they intercept, you found your ikigai. And passion is for you. Purpose is for others. And for your viewers, it might be a little bit too much. I would recommend you do a part-time ikigai, which would be just ask yourself two things. What is it that you love to do? And what are you good at? So once you start doing a part-time, the other two will fall into place. And once they intercept, you have found your reason for being.
Well, thank you, Harriet. That was wonderful advice for anyone looking for how to turn around present circumstances and try to find a way to capitalize on it rather than get dug deeper and deeper into the hole of depression and fear. And Dr. Lycka, I wonder if you could maybe outline the chapters or the different pearls that are contained in your book.
I would love to, Peter. But first, before I do that, I want to give your listeners a very special gift. I'd like to give them 52 golden pearls of wisdom. And that's something we'd love to give listeners, especially yours, because I know how good they're going to be. And all your listeners need to do is to text us the word golden pearls, pearls with an S, to 1-819-717-2515. That's 1-819-717-2515. And in those golden pearls, you will get one every week for the very next 52 weeks to help keep you on track, to help keep you on this path that Harriet and I have set out. Now, what are our golden pearls, the 13 that we've chosen? Well, first of all, we have 13 and a golden pearl and a bonus pearl. The bonus pearl is actually fear, because so many people are going through fear right now. It's crazy, especially with COVID going on and this virus being very nasty and thinking we have it beat, and then it comes back again and worse and worse and worse. So fear means false expectations appearing real. It's an eponym. So I think we have to address that in everybody's life. So that chapter in itself is a very important one for everybody. But here's our pearls, 1 to 13. And it starts with love and it ends with number 13, empowerment, because that's where we think it is. Love is a very important pearl. It's one of the strongest pearls everyone is going to have. And you know, love is one of the few things that you get more by giving. And that's one of the important things. Unfortunately, hate is something you get more by giving as well. So I think love is stronger than hate, and I think you can overcome it. The second one is inspiration. Inspiration is a very important pearl. It comes from the word inspire, from the Latin, which means in the spirit. So in other words, a breath of life. And I think everybody needs to be inspired. It's one of the most important things we can do. The third thing is victory. Victory is something we all should strive for and work for. But to become victorious, you must go through vulnerability. Vulnerability is a very tough thing because none of us like to be vulnerable. But to be victorious, you have to be vulnerable. In other words, if you're running a race, Peter, you can't win that race unless you put it all on the line. And I mention this because Harriet is a crazy runner. She runs races barefoot. She loved to run these death races for days in her bare feet. And so, but she knows herself that to get there, she has to be vulnerable. And without being vulnerable, she would never win. And that's an important thing. The next one is intention or purpose, which Harriet already covered with the Ikigai. So I think it's important people to realize that. Non-negotiables are very, very important in everybody's life. That's pearl number 6. I think everybody should have non-negotiables. They should have things that they'll never negotiate on, and they should be very part. But number 7 is one of the keys, one of the important ones, called forgiveness. And I'm going to pause there for a minute and let Harry talk a little bit on forgiveness.
You bet. So now forgiveness is very important, because if you don't heal the past, you bleed in the future. And we are told that you should forgive quickly so that you can continue, you can start healing. However, it's not easy to forgive so quickly, especially if something has happened to you. Like, for example, what happened to me and Dr. Lycka, we went through trauma, and it's not easy to just forgive very quickly. You have to go through a process. And forgiveness is definitely not a natural emotion. Hate is. And when people say they don't want to hate, I know early on Dr. Lycka mentioned hate is the worst, but it depends on how you use that. We can use hate to protect what we love. For example, you can say, I hate cancer because it's killing my father. So I'm using hate to remind myself of what I love. And when people say hate, they mean anger, because anger is more proactive. It's reactive, and people lash out and you get out of control. Hate is more proactive. So what I had to do to learn how to forgive, I used 3 steps. Number 1, I had to write down on a piece of paper the reason that I hate. And journaling is so important. So number 1, I hate my stalker because he put me in the hospital. I hate my stalker because he put a scar on my leg. Number 2, get rid of the second part and add love. I hate my stalker, but I love being healthy. I hate my stalker, but I love my perfect imperfections. And then number 3, get rid of the hate and now focus on love. I love my perfect imperfection. I love being healthy. I love my family. And you do that in the morning and you do that in the afternoon. Before you know it, you have a love journal. I love being healthy. I love my perfect imperfection. I love my family, and so on and so on. So you see, once you get rid of the hate, you can focus on the love. Because if you don't forgive, it's the same thing as I'm drinking poison and hoping the person who hurt me is gonna die from it. But no, and it's the bite. It's not the bite that kills you. It's that venom that is in your body. So that's why I think this is
very well said. I'm curious, and I'm sure the listeners would like to know how long it took you to get to that place where you could forgive your attacker.
Oh, it's a long process, and it's very individual. There's no measuring stick on how long it should take. For me, it took me about a year.
Okay.
And I'll be continuously
and did you get
forgiving.
any help, any professional counseling along the way to help you with dealing with that trauma?
Actually, I wasn't ready to meet a counselor. I did it on my own, but what I found was very helpful is a community of friends and family.
Mm-hmm.
They were so supportive, and I did have the option to seek counseling, but for me, it didn't work for me. I was ready to do it on my own and also
Mm-hmm.
reach out to my
Mm-hmm.
friends, and they were willing to support me. So you have to find ways that work for you.
Yeah, that's important, to reach out, not to just think you can do this on your own,
And
but certainly a long way in helping people is to get your book. That's a great way, because you are giving steps that can be taken to help a person who's gone through some kind of trauma. And let's face it, who hasn't? What human being living today hasn't suffered through some kind of a trauma, either as part of a pandemic like we have today, or financial, or physical, or emotional? I mean, living as a human being means suffering.
Exactly. And that's how we appreciate happiness.
Now, important thing about forgiveness is that it's not always a one-time thing. It's a thing that you do over and over and over again as these angry thoughts come into your mind and the want to hurt somebody comes into your mind. So it's important to realize it's a process rather than a thing. It's not just something that happens.
And that's something that a lot of people feel right away. I mean, they want to get revenge. They want to go
Yes.
after that person who hurt them. It seems to be the first instinct that we have as humans, which I guess is a carryover from the animals that we share
Yes.
the history with on this planet. Dr. Lycka, I wonder if you could give some insight into why that isn't in our best interest.
Well, you know, again, I think Harriet gave a great example of, you know, when you get bitten by a snake, it's not the snake bite that kills you. It's the venom that keeps going on inside your system that really kills you. And that's the important thing. And let me go down the list a little bit more, because some of these others apply here too. 8 is attitude, and attitude is very important. The way that you address the world is what you get back. And I think you have to develop a proper attitude. It's not something that gives us. And part of that attitude is thankfulness or gratefulness. You know, Peter, us in North America are so lucky. Even the poorest person in North America has more than the richest person in the slums of Calcutta. You know, it's amazing what we have in this country. And we are so blessed. And one of the things Harriet and I like people to do is have a thankfulness journal, is to write down 3 things every morning that you're thankful for, because your world will change as a result of that. And I think that's very important. 10 is something you showed us, Peter, by tenaciousness, that when your recording did not happen, you just got in touch with us and said, could you please do it again? And of course we were delighted to, because we know every chance we get to be on a show, we get to be better the next time. Even though the last time we were great, this time we're even going to be greater, because we've had a little time to chance to know you, Peter, and know what you're like. Now,
Yeah,
11
I totally agree. I think it was sort of like a dress rehearsal the last time, and now we're doing it live. The real thing is here, ladies and gentlemen. And we'd love to hear feedback from everyone out there who hears about our genuine story. 3 people creating a pearl out of a failure.
Yes, and I think that's the important thing. And pearl number 11 is laughter. And laughter is something that's great, because you learn to laugh at yourself, at your faux pas, at your mistakes. And I think laughter, to me, is proof that there's a higher being in life that helps us to overcome these things as we go by. And I think that's important. And I'd like to share with you, Peter, that, you know, science has studied laughter. And they've found it's one of the few ways that you can bring your mind and body back into sync in seconds. And they've also studied the world's funniest joke. Hey, did you know that, Peter? That a scientist by the name of Richard Wiseman studied the world's funniest joke. He put all jokes together. Now. You want to hear the world's funniest joke? You did that now.
Okay, I heard it the last time.
Well,
we had this show.
Let me tell you what the joke is.
But this time, you're going to say it even better.
Of course. Well, you see, there were 2 hunters out in the woods, and one hunter dropped down dead. He looked like he was dead. His buddy didn't know what to do. He shakes him and says, buddy, wake up, wake up, wake up. His buddy didn't move. So he pulls out his cell phone from his pocket, his most amazing device. You can get cell phones working anywhere, even deep in the woods. So he calls the operator and says, operator, please help me. I don't know what to do. My buddy, he looks dead. The buddy says nothing. The operator says, okay, sir, calm down. Calm down. Can you please make sure he's dead? Well, the phone drops down. There's a loud click, and then a loud bang. And the buddy comes back and says, okay, he's dead. What do I do next?
That's even better than last time.
You know,
Wow.
it's got to be the world's worst joke, and I apologize to anybody I offended. But, you know, it's the improbabilities in life that we laugh at. You know, we all slip when somebody slips on a banana peel. We all laugh at them. Why? Because it looks so funny. I mean, a person should walk around a banana peel, not slip on it, right? You know, all sorts of things we laugh on. Otherwise, we'd be crying. Now, I'm going to go to the last pearl, and then I'm going to come back to pearl number 12 because I want to spend some time there. But the last pearl is empowerment. And I tell you, Harriet is the master of empowerment. So I'm going to ask her to say a few words on empowerment.
Yes, empowerment is my favorite. And when I think of empowerment, I think of yourself walking in a room and it's dark, there's nothing in there, and then you turn on your light and there's power. So that's empowerment. That's self-awareness, self-control, self-determination, emotional intelligence. So when you have that, you're so powerful and you can do just about anything. And having empowerment means you're detaching yourself from anything, but detachment does not mean, detachment is it doesn't mean you don't own anything. It means that nothing owns you. So when you have that, you have the empowerment to just be able to do anything that you set your mind to, as long as you focus. So I love empowerment. I couldn't go on and on, but I better not. We have time for.
No, go ahead. Well, let's see how much time we have here. But that's what one of the things you're doing is you're leading these empowerment groups for women.
You bet, yeah. So the biggest thing with empowerment that lacks a lot for a lot of the women and the girls, or even the men, is self-worth. So that's the biggest worth. If you don't have self-worth, you don't think you're worth anything. So what I'll do in the program when I'm showing them what their self-worth is, I'll bring a $20 bill and I ask who wants this $20 bill. And everybody says, of course I want it. And then I'll take the $20 bill, I'll crumble it, I'll put it on the ground, I'll dump water on it, and then I'll ask, now who wants this $20 bill? And everybody says, yes, of course I want it. And I ask them why. They say, because it did not lose its value. And I say, you just made a point. You're gonna go through a lot of things in your life. You're gonna get crumbled. People are gonna be negative. You're gonna be disappointed. You're gonna tape something that doesn't turn up. So all of those disappointment, but you still do not lose your value. You're still who you are. So you have to love yourself unconditionally. I know your self-worth has no, your self-worth is there. You don't lose your value. So that's empowerment.
Well, that's beautiful. Very well said. Okay, Dr. Lycka, I'd like to ask you to talk about, is it chapter 11?
12, enthusiasm.
12.
Enthusiasm.
Yeah.
And I'm going to tell you a little story about Fred the carpenter. Fred was a carpenter, and he had been working 35 years for one company, and he was tired. He just couldn't do it anymore. He had lost his enthusiasm. So he went to his boss and said, boss, I'm done. I'm out of here. The boss was taken aback by this. This was his master carpenter, the person that had helped him build all his houses all his life. So he said to Fred, Fred, please, can you do one more job for me? And Fred said, well, of course, boss, I've loved it here. This has been the funnest thing I've done in my life. I've enjoyed it. What would you want me to do? The boss said, could you build me just one more house? Only you can do it. You're my master carpenter. Fred begrudgingly said yes, but his heart was not into it. He'd drag his butt to work every day. He'd maybe work 2 hours, whereas in the old days, he'd work 18. He'd work 20 if he had to. But now he just barely got the job done. He did shoddy workmanship, something he had never done before. And the house barely passed inspection. But when he did, he went back to his boss and said, okay, I'm out of here. The boss said, just hold it, Fred. We're going to get everybody around. And he did. They had some champagne, they had some caviar, they celebrated Fred's retirement. And he said to everybody, this is a very happy day for Fred, but it's very sad for me. Fred's retiring. It's his last day. But Fred, I've got a very special gift for you. Fred, here's the keys to the last house you ever built. Please take these and live in this house for the rest of your life. Wow. Enjoy it with all the enthusiasm you showed for your job.
What a story. Wow, okay. That's amazing. Amazing.
Can you picture what it would be like? If he really had enthusiasm.
Yeah, exactly. So he got left with the shoddy house that he built. Okay, that's a very important lesson right there for anyone who's thinking about, I don't really feel like really putting a lot of work into this, whatever it is I'm doing. But in the end, you're the one who suffers, right? One way or the other. So I want to close by saying to everyone out there that the book is available at Amazon. The Secrets to Living a Fantastic Life. 2 survivors reveal the 13 golden pearls they've discovered. And this book, I think, is for everyone. It has so many pearls of wisdom. I mean, quite literally, every chapter reveals information of 2 survivors and how that applies to each and every one of you. And as Dr. Alan Lycka was saying, there's even a gift that they will give you if you text. And Dr. Lycka, that number again is?
Yes, I'll just drag it up one more time, Peter. And I also have another gift for them as well. But if they would like to get 52 golden pearls, 1-819-717-2515. Text the word golden pearls. And if they email me the word golden pearls to Ellen at Dr. Dr. Ellen, ALLEN, Lycka, LYCKA.com, golden pearls, emailed to Ellen at Dr. Ellen Lycka.com. Harriet and I will send you 5 golden pearls. Now, these are physical golden pearls. Unfortunately, they're not worth $10,000 each, but they do have a mantra with them that tells you the meaning of each of those pearls. So these could be much more valuable than $10,000. These could be much more valuable if you take these pearls, meditate them on them, and bring them into your real life. So we'll mail them to you if you ask them. And as I said on your last show that didn't record, this is the very first show we've given them on. So I want everybody to participate in that and have this as a very special gift from us so that everybody can enjoy the fantastic life Harriet and I enjoy. That's Ellen at Dr. Dr. Ellen, ALLEN, Lycka, LYCKA.com.
Well, thank you very much. And I will make sure that I list all of those references at the bottom of this video, wherever it's shown on my various social platforms under Peter the Healer, your celestial broadcaster. And just in closing, I want to say that it's been an incredible pleasure for me personally to have both Harriet Tinka and Dr. Alan Lycka on my show again. And this time it was recorded. And this time I look forward to seeing it after we say goodbye. Recording, and then it has to go through a conversion process. So I look forward to seeing that in a few moments. If it doesn't, then
we're around.
You're around, thank goodness. I may be calling you, but I have a feeling we're probably going to connect again in the future, some way, somehow.
You bet. We are happy to do that anytime, Peter.
Beautiful. All right, then with that, God bless you and all my listeners, and take care.